We saw the 49ers put a butt whooping on the Dallas Cowboys last night. 42-10 was the final. I said on the morning call, I thought it would be difficult to make a case for any team, but San Francisco is the best team in football right now. But you said adamantly, you don't think it's a slam dunk.
No, I mean, yes. If you ask me who's the best team in football, I'm going to say San Francisco. But I can make an argument for actually two other teams.
Philadelphia,
but that's not who would be my first choice.
Let me see. I think you'd probably try to make an argument for Miami.
Just
based on
their offense right now.
I think they're 1, 2, and 3.
Now I know
San Francisco, Philly, Miami.
Miami's offense stalled out the second half against Buffalo, but in 9 out of 10 halves so far this year, their offense has been completely unstoppable.
I agree.
And the only way to slow down the Miami offense at all is to get a massive pass rush. I can't even talk. And if you can't do that, you can't stop them. So, and Miami, while not quite as good as San Francisco defensively, they're better offensively. As good as San Francisco is offensively, Miami's better.
Did Patrick Mahomes get hit by a bus last night after the game?
No, it did run over his foot. And the reason I say that is because he hasn't been Patrick Mahomes.
I don't care. He's still Patrick Mahomes.
And you know what? I think he misses Tyreek Hill in a major way.
They won a Super Bowl without him last year.
I know they did, but still, their offense just does. They're great. I've got them at number 4. But their offense just doesn't look the same without Tyreek Hill.
No, I don't agree with that because last year their offense was the best in football. I don't think it's Tyreek Hill.
Did they miss him this year?
But it doesn't make sense.
Their receivers, you talk about a bunch of Jags.
Yeah. But they had a bunch of Jags last year, and they were the best offense in the league.
And somehow, Travis Kelce could carry you above all of that.
I think it's been a couple of things. Their offense hasn't looked as sharp. By the way, their defense looks great. Their defense looks really good. I know, it wasn't as good yesterday, but what was the final score of that game now? I can't remember.
Which one?
The Chiefs.
They won by 7?
27-20.
Right. They held on. Right. There was a weird call at the end of that game against the Vikings. But anyway.
Are we ready to talk about maybe the offensive coordinator had more to do there with the offense than we thought?
I think we got it. The Chiefs are slow starters. They've been slow starters every year. They got off to a bad start last year offensively.
They did, like the Bengals.
Remember, Kelce missed the game and then sprained his ankle yesterday and still played. So he hasn't been 100% yet. They do need Kelce. There's no doubt. If Kelce's not right, that's a problem.
Different comment. Yeah.
That's it. But
I look at it like this. I get it that you can get rid of Tyreek Hill and still win a Super Bowl, but the equivalent of counting on that is being in a car accident, and you say when you get in an accident you didn't have your seatbelt on. You'd be like, well, I didn't have my seatbelt on yesterday.
Well, that's not fair.
The circumstances
you have the best quarterback in football.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
That everything is year to year.
You can't win a Super Bowl and come back 2 years later and say, gosh, they really missed that guy.
Why can't you?
No, that doesn't make any sense.
That don't make no sense. Just because
they won the Super Bowl, that doesn't mean anything. Just because they won the Super Bowl.
Winning a Super Bowl means usually one thing. You're not going back the next year.
So my thing.
But you're saying your example is like, well, you got lucky not to die. The Chiefs didn't get lucky to win the Super Bowl.
Well, no. Listen, your degree of difficulty goes up when you don't have extreme talent. Yes, you can win that year, but the next year doesn't mean everybody else didn't get better.
There's no arguing they would look better if Hill was in that offense.
Right.
There's no arguing that.
Fine, but they look good enough to win the Super Bowl
last year. But I think G's point is
talking about this year
in the NFL is different.
I know that, but this year is 5 games, and I just told you they were a slow starter last year.
What's more last year?
What's more likely, that they're just off to a slow start and they're going to look great as the season goes along, or that last year was an anomaly that they won the Super Bowl?
I don't think it was an anomaly. I don't either.
They was the best team last year.
Saying they miss a guy who they won the Super Bowl without doesn't make any sense.
Yes, it does.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it does. Because would they be, in your view, do you think they'd be a better offense if Tyreek Hill was in that
every team would be a better offense with Tyreek.
So yes.
But they don't need him to win a Super Bowl. They already proved that. That's what I'm saying.
Last year, can they do it again this year without him?
Yes.
Why not?
Of course.
We'll find out. No, we'll find out. But based on what I've seen so far, I'm not picking them.
Like if you look at it, we just talked about who is it this year. We talked about the top 2 teams, the Philadelphia Eagles and the 49ers are head and shoulders better than everybody else right now. Head and shoulders.
I didn't include the Chiefs in the argument, which was my mistake. The Chiefs are right there. It's early.
Absolutely.
It's
I have
hard
Chiefs
to compare.
at 4, so I think they're absolutely in the conversation.
I don't want to spin this completely off where Mike was going. What's interesting, though, Miami needs home field because Miami playing in the cold in January,
Ain't gonna work.
I don't think that offense is going to look the same going to Buffalo or Kansas City.
No, it will not travel well.
They need home field throughout, and
I
don't
would
know if they're going to get it.
And they know that too.
Yeah.
If the playoffs started today, I'd still take the Chiefs in the AFC.
I would too. Yeah,
100%.
for sure.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of if you're wearing the crown, you deserve that respect.
When's the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game?
But what I will say is, just based on the look test, and it's only through 5 weeks, but just based on the look test, the Niners and Eagles are doing it at a different level with the Dolphins right there, just barely behind them, and then the Chiefs barely behind the Dolphins.
But who's looking the best in October is meaningless.
Absolutely.
It's who's the best when it matters.
I agree with that. And I will say that Kelsey, he's starting to look like he's 34. What is he, 30 what? 30,
Well, he's been hurt.
32,
I don't know.
32, I believe. I'll double check.
It's in his early 30s, I think.
When you start he got the ankle injury.
Maybe 31.
He missed the first few games this season.
He's got groupie legs now.
Yeah, now he's right. Stop hanging out
34.
before the games.
Okay.
Hey, bro, listen. You
34.
better save your energy,
Just
Travis.
34.
You're doing way too much.
He was 33 3 days ago.
So, you know,
Well, it's funny. You turn 34 and you just
Oh,
go
he's
to hell.
34. Listen, yeah, he the number one. I would like that. See, for me, I would like to have, if I was Andy Reid, I would like to have another guy who is a receiver or another receiving guy.
Oh, they would love that.
That could age him gracefully.
Sure.
Like, right now, it looked like he's just the only target. It is, and Mahomes is great, but his body looked like it's just, he got a lot of commercials too.
It's almost like teams are saying, well, your wide receivers don't scare us. We'll give Kelsey his.
Yeah.
We'll try to keep you out of the end zone, but nobody else on this offense is going to beat us. Bull, you heard something on the radio this morning about San Francisco.
This is
that
fascinating,
you wanted
guys.
to share.
So Joe Thomas was on with Ken and Lyman this morning. Those guys did an excellent job. It was a very good interview. Lima asked him, what is it about, because Kyle Shanahan obviously was here. And then he did the famous PowerPoint to get himself out of Cleveland. But anyway,
Maybe one of the smartest things
he
he's
said,
ever
what
done.
makes Kyle Shanahan different? Why is he seem, along with Mike McDaniel, who worked under Kyle Shanahan, why do those guys seem to be at this kind of different level in terms of calling offense?
Right.
And this is what Joe Thomas said. I didn't know this, and this was so obvious once you knew this. He said most offensive coordinators come from the skill position background. Like they were quarterbacks or they've been quarterback coaches, and they come out of that vein. And they're clueless as to the offensive line. So on a lot of teams, you have the head coach or the offensive coordinator is basically the passing game coordinator. And then when you need a run play, he'll call over to the offensive line coach and say, well, what do we run here? You know what I mean?
Right.
Basically, the offensive line coach is running the running game.
The run game coordinator.
And when you have two guys doing that, it's not going to be perfectly in sync.
You can't be in sync because
No.
it's two minds.
Kyle Shanahan is the only coach that Joe Thomas ever had, and obviously Joe had a lot of offensive coaches
Yes, he
because they
did.
changed the coaches a lot. He said he's the only coach I ever had who came in and he knew the offensive line inside and out.
As they all should.
So he was able to call the plays in sync, in rhythm. The pass and the run flowed together better because he understood how to be in charge of both the running game and the passing game. And when you think about that, you're like, well, that's obvious that would make. But who would have thought about that? It's something you wouldn't think about that, oh, well, these coaches. I didn't think that a lot of coaches didn't really know the offensive line. I assumed if you were an offensive coordinator, you knew the offense inside and out. Apparently, that's not the case.
Interesting.
And that is fascinating, and that's what gives him and Mike McDaniel, who learned under him, these big edges.
Yeah. I would think Andy Reid knows the offensive line. That was his background. I would think that
Another great offensive
he's an
play
offensive
caller.
guru. I just think that there are guys that are smarter. You know, when you look at Belichick, now granted he's having an awful year this year, but throughout the body of his career, everyone's looked at him as a genius who's playing it on a different level.
On defense.
Defense, yes, but even on the offense. I mean, there were times where and all of his offensive coordinators were coming and going, taking head coaching jobs, failing, coming back. And the offense, through all of that, rarely missed a beat.
Because of Tom Brady.
Well, Tom Brady is the great eraser. But I also think that, like, when you look at Shanahan, I think generally he's looked at as a genius. Like, we look at him as we look at Andy Reid on offense. And maybe there is something to that, Bull. I don't know how many.
It was fascinating. Who was he? He was the OC under Hugh, right? No,
Mike
before
Patton.
that. Patton, right.
Do you know the ins and outs of the infamous PowerPoint presentation? What do you know about that story? I've heard so many different versions of it. I don't know what's really true.
They should have fired everybody else and made him the coach.
Guess what?
That would have been beautiful.
He wasn't wrong.
He wasn't.
There was. I'm trying to be very careful here.
I know you are. You think about it.
There was. I know we were going to go here, but I should have thought about that. Kyle and Ray did not
see eye to eye
at all.
Right, and I'd heard that
at all.
I'd heard that.
That was. I didn't realialize how deep.
And by the way, where is Ray?
Atlanta. No, he's in Atlanta.
Okay.
Oh, he's still in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard, maybe to take you off because I heard, not from you, so I'm not stealing your sources, but I heard from someone reliable that basically outside of Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan hated everybody else in the Browns organization. That's what I heard.
Well,
he thought nobody else was any good in the entire organization.
He showed why the organization has been in a tailspin forever.
Yes.
And he gave names and examples of people that were undercutting the franchise's success that had to go, and he was shown the door.
I actually asked Kyle about that at the owners' meetings in March.
Really?
Yeah, and he didn't really want to talk about it very much.
I can't imagine that he would because, again, we talked about this earlier. You want to stay employed, whether at your present job or you want to be hireable somewhere else.
Right. We were looking into a story on the Browns, and ultimately we didn't really do a whole lot. It just didn't come together. And so that was part of it, was that PowerPoint presentation of that whole era. And so we kind of were digging in.
Wouldn't you love to get your hands on that now?
I'm sure he still has.
Because hindsight always, it always shines a light on what was true and what in the moment it might have been debatable.
Yeah.
But history is always going to show whether or not that was right.
Right.
Or
the
that
truth
was
always
wrong.
comes out.
Now, he's still got to win a Super Bowl.
Based on, now, you're right. He was up 28-3 in the Super Bowl, and all that offensive genius escaped him.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is when I say history always tells the proper tale, to me, we have the benefit of the last 7 years' results, what he's done and what the Browns have done. And that's why I'm saying, because I've heard stories. Some of them, to me, sound like they're Paul Bunyan tales. Some of what I heard, I said at the time, there's no way he did that. There's no way he did that. But, so I don't know. I don't know what's true and what's, this sort of mythical, legend that has built itself up. But the reason I'd say I would love to see that PowerPoint now, because everything that he said, now with the benefits of the results, is either provably true or false.
Well, here's the thing. Would Kyle Shanahan be this good of a head coach if he was the head coach of the Browns?
There's no way of knowing because of all the outside influences.
I say
no. Now,
right.
but I think he knew that.
Yes.
He looked around. I think I've told this story to you a number of times where I've had NFL lifers, guys that have covered the league since the 90s, all kind of cornered me and were bullying me once at ESPN, saying, Jay, you got to divorce this team. You're killing yourself.
You can't divorce it.
I know you can't, and that's what I told them. And they all said, normally, your team is your team. You're born that way, you die that way. But they were all saying, we like you. You're torturing yourself. Hear us all when we collectively tell you this organization is always going to be where they are right now. They can't figure out success, and if they ever do, they won't be able to sustain it long term. And I'm wondering if Kyle Shanahan, growing up in the sport with his dad as a head coach, knowing what he knows, talking to his father, telling him what was going on in the building, he probably came to the same conclusion that these guys all had. Yeah. It's never going to work with these pieces in place, and those pieces are immovable.
I've had players tell me again this year, it's not a coincidence our best year was 2020 under this regime. That's not a coincidence because there was nobody else in the building, and it was all football all the time.
Nobody to get in the way.
They're still talking about that.
Yeah.
That 2020 not coming back, fellas.
You're right. You're right.
You're
right.
And when you have a bad owner, you have to overcome a bad owner. That's just part of it.
But that is the most, in my view.
Yeah.
Because he's not fireable, tradable, and he's always going to be there. And that's was the point that my buddies at ESPN were telling me. You're stuck. You're stuck. If the team ever changes hands and you want to come back, you should. But we're trying to save you another decade of heartbreak, misery, and failure because it is what it is, and it is not going to change.
But at what point, fellas, do you get some? I look at these other organizations. You get an opportunity to put your stamp on it, right? They've given Kevin Stefanski. I don't see them holding him back from being like, "Hey, here's this player. He wanted him." No, they went and got his quarterback. When they wanted to get rid of Baker, guess what? They got rid of Baker. When Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't doing what he was supposed to, they never said, "Oh, hold on."
No, it's not a pass for everybody.
No. I'm just saying. He's gotten.
Let me tell you, ownership was 1,000% on board with moving on from Baker. 1,000%.
Well, yeah.
So that you're making it sound like it was a Kevin thing, wanting rid of Baker and wanting to go.
No, I don't think anybody thought that.
I'm just saying.
I thought that's what. Maybe I misunderstood.
No, I'm just saying that he's been put in a position where it hasn't. I don't think the organization has told him he couldn't have anything.
There's no more excuses.
No, they'll provide financially.
We all know Jimmy's not a good owner, but he does spend money.
They'll provide whatever you need financially.